It's my privilege to be here on behalf of the community to deliver a State of the City update to many of you, and of course those joining us by the web. I'd like to introduce though my council colleagues that join me here today, because I have the opportunity to of course represent the entire team at City Hall, and there's a number of them here with me today. So from council we have, just stand up as I say your name and we'll recognize all of you. Councillor Brad Beattie, Danielle Ingram, Kathy Basilakos, Graham Bunting, Bonnie Henderson, Tom Clifford, and Dave Gaffney. So thank you to all of you for your support. And of course the people that actually make things happen, because they're tasked with the day-to-day responsibilities, our Chief Administrative Officer Rob Horn, Jackie Mockler, our Director of HR, Michael Humble, our Director of Corporate Services, John Parody, Fire Chief, Neil Anderson, Deputy Fire Chief, Ed Delovic, Director of Infrastructure and Development Services, Mike Bites, who takes a great job for us, our communications lead down front, and from the library we have Krista Robinson, and Wendy Hicks, Systems Library and Director of Public Services, Joni Gerber, CEO of Invest Stratford, Mike Pullen, the Managing Director of Invest Stratford, and Uzi Sensidini, the President of Festival Hydro. As well as my assistant Pat Shantz for all her work, and of course our newest member of the team, our Police Chief Greg Skinner, who's joined us from the OPP, and congratulations Greg. These are the ladies and gentlemen that do the work each and every day. So, 15 years ago today, my first State of the City address was at the Arden Park Hotel. A tall, gangly guy named Tom Moore walked up to me as I was walking in. A little nervous, I was going to deliver my first State of the City address, and he said, "Just read it like I wrote it." So, to Tom, who's not with us today, it's great to have the Orr Insurance team with us today, but I remember that fondly with Tom, and he always needs some good humor at these events. The City of Stratford, of course, and I'm biased, but we're on a good trajectory. We have challenges, and we have many opportunities. We look across the landscape, and no different on Thursday when the provincial budget comes down. Like many sectors and many organizations, we're going to be faced with making choices. Some of them are going to be harder than others, and some are going to be downright tough. But I think it's important that we continue to think about it as a community, make decisions in the best interest of all, and have a long-term vision of where the community can head. With that in mind, I believe council and staff are working to do that. As I say every year, we do have our challenges, and in social services, affordable housing continues to be one for us. We have over 200 people, 200 families on a waiting list for affordable housing within Stratford and Perth County. And we're trying to move forward in that file, partnering with developers to, of course, have them build affordable housing units and be given rent supplement from the government to, of course, offset the rent, but also in building some of our own infrastructure and stock. And to that end, I'm happy to tell you that this fall, the Britannia Street Affordable Housing Project with 35 enhanced two-story units will come online, and they'll be owned and managed by the City of Stratford. So for the first time in a number of years, we'll actually have brand new housing stock owned and managed by the city. And of course, that's to be followed up with 20 more additional units within the next 2 to 3 years on the same site. So I think it's important to know that we are trying to move forward for those most vulnerable in our community. And there are many that are vulnerable within our community. There are over 628 families on Ontario Works at the end of 2018. On average, they're on that program for 29 months. In the last 2 years, we've seen that decrease from 31 months to 29. So we're getting people off of Ontario Works a little sooner, but the numbers are still quite high. And to put it in perspective for you, 15 years ago, we had roughly 440 families on Ontario Works within our community. So we've enjoyed some great economic boom times. We also still have to consider those less fortunate and in need within our community. And we're seeing some interesting stats along with it. Do you know that manufacturing represents 17% of all jobs in Stratford? One of the largest sectors we have. And out of those 17% of the manufacturing jobs, the manufacturers themselves, 88% of the manufacturers within our community say they have hard to fill positions due to a lack of qualified employees. So they can't find the workers they need. And there's an opportunity for us to move forward in that. And Connect to Skills, a partnership, and it's a great partnership between Partners in Employment, Conestoga Career Center, Invest Stratford. Working collectively, we're trying to help those manufacturers identify workers to move forward. And this last year, we had 100 participants within the program. 69 of them where roughly 2/3 came from the Ontario Works program. And out of those 69 people, 43 of them have continued on in employment after they graduated from the Connect to Skills program. The previous year we had 15. So in 2 years we graduated 58 people off of Ontario Works into some level of employment within our community. Now this project was one of 3 started in the province of Ontario 2 years ago as a pilot project. And it has been so wildly successful that the government has just announced it will continue funding for another year. And we are going to take 60 new workers into that program this year, and 45 of them are going to come from Ontario Works. So we are continuing to try to provide skills enhancement and development to the most vulnerable within our community and give them a hand up. And I think that's important. We're also looking at digitizing the curriculum, so individuals who are in employment situations who'd like to continue to improve can do so from the comfort of their own home while they're still working, and give them the opportunity to learn new skills so they can move forward. So I think that's important for us to recognize. First and foremost, we have more Ontario Works cases than maybe we'd like to have, but we do have a path forward to try to deal with it. And it takes a cooperative effort not only of the city, but economic development, manufacturers, career counseling centers, and the Ontario government to fund it. And those are the type of holistic approaches to solving problems that are going to be most successful. So while some people will say you need more housing right away, it can't be done. Well, they say you need to get people off Ontario Works, you have to work collaboratively. And I think for all of us, well, it's alarming today, we have to take a longer view of how we can work to make it happen. And we do have a strong economic sectors, and I'm going to talk about many of them here over the next couple of minutes, but I think it's important to note that since 2015, we've had $100 million invested within the manufacturing sector of our local economy by existing businesses in their facilities, either buying new equipment, putting on additions to factories, and taking on new product lines and increasing employment. And that's important because that $100 million since 2015 has generated $185 million in GDP, over $100 million in wages for the employees within those sectors and those facilities, and garnered over $10 million of taxation for the city of Stratford, both in property and of course education rates for the province of Ontario. And I think that speaks to the robustness and the diversification within our economic sector. Since the end of 2018 into 2019, the end of the year, we've sold $400,000 worth of industrial land sales, and we have another $2 million worth set to close between now and the end of the year. So that speaks to how much investment is coming into our community. Now, we're going to have a problem with that come the end of this year. We're almost going to be out of industrial land. So the city of Stratford is going to have to look at how we can bring on more industrial land, service it, be ready for further growth. Those are first world problems for us, and they're challenges because of course as you compete on where you're going to spend your infrastructure dollars, you can't deplete for the future to solve all your problems for today. It's a delicate balance, but I think it's one that we're up to the challenge of. And I want to give you some examples, just 2, one new and one existing industry that have made investments within our community. Stackpole, who's been here since the 1950s, put on a 20,000 square foot expansion and hired 87 new employees to go with it. They're on Monteith Ave, a very quiet manufacturer over there with over 300,000 square feet, doing outstanding work. And they've had to pivot from automotive into other sectors, but have done so in a very strong way. A new industry that opened late last year, and I talked about it at this time last year because they were under construction, was Trillium Hatchery. And it's in a consortium of Ontario chicken farmers. They opened their new robotic 70,000 square foot chicken hatchery that'll handle 20 million eggs in its first year. It'll be at capacity by the end of year 2. And they're already talking about expansion. And they spent $25 million right here in Stratford. Because of the strong economic base we have here, our ties to, of course, the agricultural area across the region, and it speaks to, of course, the new type of economy that's coming, where robotics is now coming into chicken hatchery production, allowing them to have a state-of-the-art facility handling a mass amount of eggs with a limited number of employees. The skills within that facility for the employees that are there are of a higher nature because they're dealing with robotics, computers, and mechanics all the time. And I think that's the type of work we want to continue to, of course, bring to our community and try to attract into the investment. But we can't forget about our downtown core, which has over 325 businesses within our heritage downtown core. And our core is very vibrant. Not to say that every spring we look out and we see blank storefronts. And that is a concern, and we try to do various things to help them. There are still some incremental pieces in place that we can help downtown landowners. First of all, there's tax incremental financing if they would like to improve the second and third stories of their buildings downtown. We can phase the taxes in over 10 years to try to help them spend money on their building to, of course, increase the usability of the upper floors, but also not putting a burden on them right from the start on taxation. Secondly, we have a loan and grant program for the facades of their buildings, and we've had that for a number of years, almost 20 years now. But this past year, the Association of Ontario Municipalities and the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs put forward a new program for Invest Stratford to manage, and what they're doing is they're allowing businesses to apply for a storefront grant to improve the lookability of their storefront from the street. So far, 4 businesses have done so. We expect another 10 to do so by the end of the year. It's a first come, first served grant process, and it expires on November 29th, 2019. So you see, we are looking at ways to invest in downtown because retail is an important part of our sector. It's a high part of our identity here in Stratford as well. The other challenge we've had one of the lowest, if not the lowest, unemployment rates in the province over the last 5 years. And in the last 5 months, we've averaged 4.1% unemployment since the start of the year. So we continue to look at ways to take a very low unemployment rate to try to transition workers off of Ontario Works and to find new opportunities for people to come into our community. And to that end, we're looking at mobility as one of the challenges that we need to address. This time last year, the County of Perth, the City of Stratford, and all the member municipalities across the region decided to partner. And we applied to the Provincial Community Transportation Grant Program. This past January, it was announced the province will be giving the City of Stratford roughly $1.5 million over 5 years to create a transportation system between Kitchener, Stratford, Listowel, St. Mary's, and London. At the same time, they gave the County of Perth a grant for roughly $1.5 million to set up transportation between Stratford, Mitchell, Moncton, Listowel, Milverton, Millbank, and Stratford. And our plan is to try to integrate, we're hiring one transportation coordinator between the two of us, to coordinate those bus services so people will come into this area, be able to maybe work within the industry within our community, or if they're transferring on, they can get out to London and Kitchener to hubs, where they can get on via a better train service, which seems to elude us here in this part of Ontario, and it actually is an opportunity to try to improve mobility within the region. And those types of innovative services only work, as I said, when we collaborate. And that's coming together member municipalities with industry and the provincial government recognizing we have challenges. We've built our new transit terminal on Downey Street. It's got 8 bays. It will actually allow us to have those buses come right into that terminal, and of course to be able to access public transit there or go further down the road if they want to look at the train travel. But it allows us to start integrating transportation across the region with intermodal, and that's important. And later this month, this week, they started construction. Hopefully later this month or early next, construction will be completed on the main facility that allow the washrooms and of course the transit driver break room to be there. So we're trying to improve transit within our community. We're also looking at interesting and innovative ways to address public transit. I've had the opportunity, along with members of council, some of them, and of course transit management staff, to look at what Belleville is doing. Belleville has taken an app that allows people, it's almost like Dial a Ride, where you can go on the app, lay out where you need to be and at what time, and it optimizes the route for the bus, so it no longer follows an exact transit route, and it's on demand. And for seniors that don't have that access, or individuals that don't have a smartphone, it allows them to dial into a dispatch system that automatically uploads the route. So if I say I need to be at work at the Stratford Mall at 9:45, it'll tell me today I'm going to get picked up at 9:03 out front of my house. Tomorrow it might be 9:08, but it optimizes the ride, and it allows us to make better use of our transit system. Belleville has done this on their late night service between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. and they've seen their ridership go up every month from an average of 1,000 a month to 4,000 a month since they've been running that pilot project in just 8 months. That's the type of transit that we're going to continue to see into the future. And those are the types of opportunities. What we hear about growing pains now with transit are solutions that are going to come forward in the future. Strong partnerships, strong communities have healthcare as a backbone. And I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to talk a little bit about doctor recruitment, because I know it's near and dear to all of our hearts, whether it's ourselves, our family members, or friends. If they do not have a local family doctor, that is, of course, of strong concern to many people. And I can tell you that right now, Stratford General Hospital, according to provincial Ministry of Health guidelines, we're one family doctor short. Healthcare Connect tells us there's 585 people within our community that do not have a family doctor. To the credit of Andrew Williams and Lori Roberts, the head of recruitment for Stratford General Hospital, we will have a new family physician come on board in September that will take 1,200 patients. So by September, we should be able to backfill that last position, take those 500 people off of Healthcare Connect, and of course have a family doctor within our community. Now, the challenge with that is there are many people who tell me that they still kept their family physician in Guelph or Chatham or somewhere else where they lived before they came here. Well, this will be an opportunity for them to actually repatriate themselves into the Stratford scene for healthcare. And of course, that is an ongoing challenge. The minute Lori solves this recruitment issue, there will be another one. And she does a great job of bringing us in specialists and doctors across a myriad of fields to make sure that we meet the healthcare challenges. And I am very thankful for the work they do. They're also going to be faced with a challenge with the closing of the 14 LHINs in the province of Ontario, local health integration networks. They will be closed and create one big Ontario super agency called Ontario Health. So when we used to deal with some of these issues, we'd head off to London to the regional office, make our case. We are now going to have to do it on a provincial-wide basis. And while that seems daunting, I have great faith in Andrew and all the service providers that rely on funding from the LHIN to do so. And those are the types of challenges that come up when you're dealing with issues that maybe aren't known to the general public, but are actually in the background in doing so. And we have to do a better job of communicating those challenges, but also people have to do a much better job of being tolerant and asking for the facts and waiting to get them before they sound the alarm bells. The hospice will open, sadly, for its first patients in June, which means, of course, end-of-life care will continue in our community. And I say sadly because it's tough to say goodbye to a family member or loved one, but the new Stratford Perth Rotary Hospice is exceptional. I've had the chance to tour. Andy Werner and Ann Fontana and their group have done an outstanding job of shepherding that project along. And they have done a great job of probably surpassing the I don't want to steal their thunder, but surpassing a fundraising goal. And the ministry has, of course, allocated us 8 beds within that facility, and they built it for 10. So they have a long-term vision in mind of where they'd like to go there. The City of Stratford has committed $1.5 million to that project. And I think for all of us, when it opens, you'll want to take the opportunity when they hold the open houses to go up and see it, and see what caring residents who have a vision of working together can do for a city. And I can't say enough about how much they've done for us. And another group that's done a lot for us is the Stratford Perth Community Foundation in its 15th year. And since 2004, they've awarded over $1 million of grants to various organizations in our community. This year in May, they'll give $180,000 away alone. And they have worked very hard to build an endowment fund so that we have interest every year that we can reinvest within our community. And I think that's the type of ongoing support that communities need, and it actually rounds out how we think as a community overall. So you've heard about partnerships with healthcare and other organizations, but the real meat and bones of the city are what you need to hear about now, and that's that the City of Stratford in 2019 will levy roughly $115 million of taxation for operations of the city budget. That's for over 425 employees, full and part-time within the city. I think for many of us, it's hard to imagine where we have that many employees, but you have to think across the whole spectrum. Whether it's the library, whether it's at Invest Stratford, the police, whether it's our contribution towards public and social housing, whether it's the social services department, public works, there's a whole lot of people behind the scenes that maybe you don't see each and every day. But those men and women do an outstanding job. So what's it mean to the average house? Well, the average house, first of all, in Stratford today is worth $298,000, according to assessment. The average house will see an increase of $110 to their their annual taxes within the City of Stratford. That is without the education portion, which was released to us last evening, which will see that number shrink a little bit again. But right now, that is where we sit. To give you an idea, most people say to me, why can't you cut it and just do zero? Well, I want to tell you this, for every 1% of the tax levy you'd like to cut, you either need to find $567,000 of revenue or cut $567,000 of expense. With that, people say, I'd like more roads paved. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy here. It's roughly $750,000 to pave a kilometer of road. People say, let's get rid of the flowers and let's pave more roads. Last year we spent $65,000 buying plant material. So that'll roughly get you 84 meters of asphalt, which should get us about, according to the way Rick Orr golfs, a driver 9-iron from here to the 8th green. So as you know, or as you can see, it's not so simple to cut funding as people would think. And there are challenges that go with it. So we are very mindful as a council of where we're spending our money and how we go about doing it. The other thing to think about, though, is that the infrastructure levy that the City of Stratford has is almost 0.9, almost 1% every year goes towards infrastructure. And right now we spend over $2 million a year that we take in from the infrastructure levy, because it compounds every year, $2 million towards new initiatives that we did 6 years ago. So we're trying to build a stable fund to address those challenges going forward. We're mindful of it. I drive the same roads you do. So does the staff. We're trying to find ways to do it, but it is an expensive problem to fix. And let's be candid, if you drive across anywhere in southwestern Ontario, our roads are not any different than many other communities. I did a little bit of a funny thing at a social event a couple weeks ago. I took a picture of a pothole in Kitchener. And I said to somebody, tell me what street this is in Stratford. I had people tell me it was Romeo Street. I had people tell me that it was Princess in front of M&D Variety. I had some people tell me that it was on Downey Street. And I said, actually, it's Weaver Street. But thanks so much. So it doesn't matter where you are. Put any city in there, we're doing the same thing. Council has been working at establishing our strategic priorities over the next 4 years for this term of council. We've had some great response. We started with a brainstorming session early in the year. We have overlap associates out of Kitchener. We then took those ideas out to the public and got feedback. We did that online and in person at an open house. We gave people lots of ways to do it. We then worked at them again through early March, and then we sent them back out in the last weekend in March to Rotary Final Day, to the market, different places within the community to engage people not only live but online. And this past Monday, Council looked at the responses they got from the public, and sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks, Council will be passing those priorities, and they will be our guidepost. And the interesting thing about it is next year I will actually build the whole State of the City address wherever I go in the community, whether it's to service clubs, organizations, or the Chamber of Commerce, around those priorities. It's almost like a way that we've been able to create a report card for us to work towards. And of course, they've come from the citizens, the ideas, and they've been verified by them. So it'll give us an opportunity to test against what residents were saying. Now, not to say that minds don't change, and we'll have to look at how we pivot on some of that over the next 4 years, but we are trying to make sure that we're in line with, of course, our residents. One of the areas we're going to work at doing so is starting, hopefully by September, is to start webcasting our own meetings across the city website so we can stream it ourselves. Now, we appreciate the partnership of Rogers and, of course, Whiteman today, but we find that many people have said to us, why do I need to be with a provider? Can't I get it across the web? So we are going to look at doing so now. We'll have to, of course, apply for a license to do so, change some of the equipment, but we are trying to make sure that we're transparent and open, and where people can tune in and see what they want and when they want to see it. The other thing we're going to do is we're starting to put more payment services online. And I'm happy to tell you the first one we're going to do is parking tickets. So we're going to look at being able to pay any number of different fees online, whether it's recreation, whether it's parking tickets, whether it's eventual things. We're trying to find different ways to do it. And we thought parking tickets was the greatest one, because nobody wants to come in and pay one face-to-face at City Hall. We're also trying to use our Ping Street app, which is, of course, the city's app. And it's an interesting app. It's worked out very well for us, where you can report a problem, and it actually goes through the app to the manager or supervisor responsible, that goes in their daily tasks, that gets uploaded to the system right away, and allows staff to efficiently and promptly deal with a lot of those issues. And whether it's a street light that's out, whether it's a pothole, a missing sign, whether it's a hazard, whether it's a garbage can that's overfilled. It allows us to actually, in a very effective and efficient manner, do transactions in business in the future. Now for older citizens, calling shots at the mayor's office is still an option. She's so happy to do that every day. Or you can continue to just go to the website and type it in and send it to us that way. But we're trying to find different ways to engage people so that they feel that they have a voice within the system. We're also trying to find different ways to develop our resources as it relates to transitional and transformational projects in the city of Stratford. And the Cooper site is still one that we work towards. We completed a master plan for this in 2017. We know what it entails: senior center, active YMCA, meeting space, university, cultural space, all those things. Our challenge is we can't move forward until federal and provincial grants are available. Just 2 weeks ago, the federal government announced their infrastructure program is starting to roll out. We could move beforehand, but the minute you spend $1 on a project and the grants haven't been approved, you don't qualify for any of the money. So it's not that people have a desire not to be effective. It's that if you do not want to pay the whole bill, we have to find ways to work with the senior levels of government to access funding. And that's one of the challenges we're putting in place. And the YMCA and university are very willing partners, and the Stratford Lakeside Active Adults are a very loud cheering squad. The University of Waterloo, Jenny DeBanco's here. Jenny retired last year from the university, and thank you so much for your leadership. Under Ginny's leadership, the university since 2012, which started with 16 students and has over 650 today, grew by 20% a year under her leadership. So Ginny, thank you so much for all you do. And this year, they are actually going to probably grow by another 20%, and they're going to reach capacity in their building by the end of next school year. So options are now being looked at with regards to places for future expansion. And of course, the community hub is one of them. And that's one of those opportunities for us, because if I tell you the demographics, and I think everybody should know this, the demographics within our community are interesting. Right now, we have according to the last census, 31,465 people living in our community. 21% of them are over the age of 65. That's up 3% from the last census. That's the largest growth rate that we've had. So we have more retirees here. 15% are under the age of 14, and only 17% are between the ages of 15 and 29. So the university is a strategic investment for us to try to convert those individuals that are here to become long-term residents within our community, to bring industries that are applicable to their skills and their interests, and to show them that a quality of life in a community our size matters. And I look forward to, of course, continuing to see the support through the Small Business Center, the Accelerator Center at the University of Waterloo, Community Futures, different programs where we try to entice young people to look at Stratford as a viable option to stay and raise a family, and of course live in our community long term. We have lots of other great things on the horizon that I think many of us forget about. And we forget about some of our best partners. And some of them are right before our eyes and we don't even think about it. And one of them would be the Stratford Festival. Last year, we welcomed 1.7 million visitors to our community. 1.7 million people came to Stratford, whether it was for an afternoon to enjoy a picnic in the park, whether it was to shop downtown or enjoy a restaurant or go to a play or summer music or any number of things. It is incredible what we're seeing within the growth within that. And Anita's here this morning, but Anita, congratulations. Last year they topped 500,000 ticket sales, a 10% increase over the previous year. They had their revenue up with a surplus of $2 million, so their revenue was up 8%. They had the longest season in the history of the Stratford Festival. So all indications are that culture still continues to be important within our community. And the Tom Patterson Theatre is on target to open in June of 2020. If you want to think about it, for every ticket sale, every ticket bought, the Conference Board of Canada indicates $278 is spent in the community for every ticket sold. That's where we get $140 million of GDP, and that's how we have 3,000 jobs directly and indirectly tied to the theater. So I think for many of us, bashing the theater sometimes is an easy sport for some people, but we should actually recognize that it's one of our largest economic drivers. And without it, we would be like so many other communities along the 401 that I'm not allowed to name. You know, we also have great culture in the summer with Stratford Summer Music, and I see John Miller at the back. John, please stand up. Maestro? There we go. There we go. John retires after 18 seasons. John, thank you for your visionary leadership and for all you did to get Stratford Summer Music to where it is. And we look forward to I often get asked by people when they drive into Stratford, how do you have Welcome to Stratford signs that say, home of the Ontario Pork Congress and the Stratford Festival? And I had to explain to them that Perth County, and this will be startling statistics for many of us, is probably the largest agricultural production county in the country. Just under $1 billion a year flows out of the farms of Perth County. That's $2.6 million a day of farm gate receipts. Now, in Perth County, there are 340 registered dairy farms and 250 registered pork producers. So when people say to me about, you know, what's that air over Stratford, I often remind them of the agricultural production in the area. And there's a lot of millionaires hiding down those dirt roads. But we continue to benefit from them. As I talked about Trillium Hatchery and I talk about the service sector, the reason we have such a strong banking presence or other services, professional services, accounting, engineering, all those types of services are because we have such a strong agricultural sector right on our doorstep. And we can't forget that for them, farming is business, and for us, farming is actually one of our economic sectors. Even though we're in an urban setting, we need to remember that. We're working towards a number of different things with regard to the environment. The first being the Net Zero Renewable Natural Gas Initiative. So under Ed's leadership at our wastewater pollution plant, we are looking at taking, with the Ontario Clean Water Agency and Suez, a US company, taking our biogas and adding a process to it which will allow us to create natural gas and to sell back onto the market, which will help us reduce greenhouse gases. We used to just flare off that methane. We're finding a way to actually go forward. We've received grants to do this project through the Ontario Centres of Excellence. Aqua has made an investment because they're looking at making this a best practice in the province of Ontario. And Suez is looking at refining, of course, their equipment. And in doing so, it could actually lead to our green bin program. And I know recycling is in the news this week. People say, why don't you do green bin? We are looking at doing so, but to do this methane conversion to biogas and onto natural gas, we need lots of organic material. We want to get this up and running so that we're not shipping organic material outside our community. We'll be shipping it to our wastewater pollution control plant, creating biogas and turning it into a revenue stream. So when I tell people sometimes, take a long view of some of these solutions, that's the long view of trying to solve a problem. It'd be really easy and expensive to load it on a truck and to send it somewhere else. We're trying to find ways, of course, to deal with it in our community. And with regards to infrastructure, our landfill site has about a 25 to 30 year life expectancy still on it, because we have seen a large reduction. We've reduced and diverted 38% of our waste in our last census year of 2015, 38%. And I think that speaks to the long-term environmental stewardship that we're trying to take on. We've also partnered with all the municipalities in the county of Perth to apply to the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, for a climate change grant. And they're going to fund for 2 years one employee that will share amongst us that will give all the municipalities in Perth County different initiatives, different strategies to deal with greenhouse gases and climate change within our operations. And some of them will be as simple as an organic waste program to divert. Others will be something probably that I haven't even thought of or anybody else has, but they're finding ways for us to be better stewards of the environment and do so in a cost-effective way. We've also undertaken a textile diversion program, which for clothing and textiles that can't be donated need to be recycled. And we diverted last year 40 tons of textiles from our landfill site by putting in place this service. And it's not complicated. You call the waste reduction coordinator of the city, they schedule a pickup, and they come by and get it. It's not on a certain day, it's not the last Friday of May every year, it's whenever you want to do it. So we've tried to find ways, of course, to divert Heck, we're even recycling cigarette butts downtown now with the support of the BIA. And we've looked at that, and it's hard to imagine. I think you've all walked the sidewalks, so you get the sense of what's on those sidewalks. If people would just use one of the 10 reciprocals that are there, we're actually working with TerraCycle to take those and create into plastic pellets. And we're trying to find ways to recycle everything within our community. And Councillor Bonnie Henderson and Brad Beattie with the Environmental Awareness Committee, hats off to you both. These two individuals spend a lot of time on those two committees, and these type of partnerships with the BIA, and Danielle works with them, have helped us find ways to recycle and do things that are not high cost, but have high reward later on, and that's important. Now the infrastructure of the city, and you've heard me say it before, is valued at roughly $800 million. We've invested $250 million in it since 2003. As I said, we allocate almost $2 million of funding each and every year from our infrastructure levy that's on the tax bill back into the system. You know, we have big projects on the horizon though. As I said, we're going to spend $18 million on capital this year. There's $7 million alone needed just to replace the Queen Street storm sewer project that will, of course, come down Queen Street into the river. And that is $7 million. We're waiting for provincial programs for that so that we can actually receive the funding we need. So there's a lot of those critical infrastructure pieces that qualify for certain funding envelopes that don't have openings each and every year. So strategically, Michael Humble and Ed Delovic, they're looking with their staff at how we can space these in so we can reduce the impact and burden on our local taxpayers. And that, of course, is good stewardship on their part. The other piece that I'd like to mention about with the infrastructure, Rob Figliuzzi's here from Whiteman. They're in year two, entering year two of a $45 million project to lay fiber, partnering with Rhizome in some areas, but lay fiber to every home. And to Rob and his staff, thanks so much for being a great partner. We're excited about the investment you chose to make in our community, and it just speaks to how we're trying to continue to move forward. You know, if you talk to Bell and Rogers, and I've done that, they weren't interested in a community our size because it wasn't big enough for them to make the investment. But players like Whiteman, who on a regional basis are very strong, have done a great job of bringing communities like ourselves and Listowel and from here to the lake on board with fiber to make sure that nobody's left behind. You can have up to 1 gig fiber service at your home through this process, which is outstanding. It now rivals major US and Canadian cities that have that, and you get it right here in Stratford, and I think that's important. Also, I'd like to congratulate Uzni Semsadini. I think for many of us, we don't appreciate what the hydro company means to us, but last April, they brought online the largest battery storage facility in the country, 10 megawatts of power that comes off the grid, stored in those batteries, and go back out. They're already looking at an expansion, but in the entire province of 90 electrical distribution companies, Festival Hydro was recognized with the 2018 Innovation Award. You're recognized as a leader in this province, and to Uzni, your staff, everyone, congratulations to you and your board for an outstanding job. Those types of innovations are allowing us to be sustainable and look at how we can improve the quality of life in our city, but also to make it a cost-effective place to do business. And if you don't think Festival Hydro being effective has a net effect on you, they're about 3 to 4% of our tax rate comes from their dividends. So 3 to 4% of our taxes would have to go up if we didn't have the dividends from Festival Hydro. So it's important that they be good stewards, and it's important for us to partner and support them in their initiatives. Now I want to give you some fun facts. Fun facts are always fun. You know, people talk about water, and there was in late 2018, there's a story about a large industry looking at Stratford. I will say that that is still an option. We haven't heard from them as of late. They're still looking at Ontario sites. But when you think of water consumption, since 1994, we've reduced water consumption within our city by 40% through different programs. Now, when you're not selling as much water, but your costs are going up, guess what? The price of water goes up. So it's a delicate balance between how much you conserve and what it costs for people. So we're always trying to find ways to effectively manage the balance between the two. We only pump roughly 31% of our daily capacity right now because we've been able to lower the use so much. So when we look at industries and we talk about industries coming here, believe me, we vet whether it's good for us overall, what it means to our overall supply, and what it means long-term to the community. So I just say that because I think sometimes people don't understand that we actually do have some numbers and we back up many of our thoughts around how we can move this forward. There's 189 kilometers of road in the city of Stratford. Think about that, 216 kilometers of sidewalk, 178 kilometers of storm sewers, and 164 kilometers of sanitary sewer. We have 12 pumping stations to move that around. The cost to maintain infrastructure today in Canadian, and specifically Stratford municipalities, is huge. And so we have a large challenge ahead of us, like many communities. As I said, $800 million in assets. We owe $68 million on those assets. 68 million at the end of 2018 was our debt load. This year, we did not take on any new debt with the city of Stratford in our budget. So we are trying to, of course, pay down our infrastructure debt, but we're also trying to upkeep very vast amounts of infrastructure. And I could go on about the number of parks, and the number of arenas and buildings, but I think you get it, that it's not an easy task. So, are we up to it? Well, I would say this past fall, I would say 11 eager people were re-elected or elected to serve the community. I think each person brings their own unique perspective to the job, and each one of them is committed to working collaboratively and cooperatively to move the city forward. You've just heard me describe the challenges ahead of us. You've heard me talk about fiscal challenges, social challenges. You've heard me talk about how solutions only come when we collaboratively and cooperatively work together with senior levels of government, organizations within our community with a long-term vision of where we want to go. Anything short of that is not effective and doesn't raise the quality of life in our community, doesn't keep us on a trajectory that we're all proud of, and doesn't make us get out of bed in the morning and be very, very proud to be residents of our community. I know for me, being mayor of my hometown is one of the absolute best jobs anybody could ever ask for. It comes with its challenges, but I ask all of you to look within and see what you're doing to make Stratford a better place. And maybe some days it's just being a little bit more positive, and maybe other days it's bringing a critical eye to it, but doing so in a way that identifies a solution, not just a problem. Stratford's got lots to Stratford's got lots on the horizon, and I look forward to working not only with business, but social agencies, our retail sector. I have to tell you, even our churches, you know, twice a year, I want to tell you how good they are. Twice a year, the churches in our community get together with City Council. Not to talk religion, but to talk about what they can do within their buildings to build a safety net and a social network to help our residents. And we talk about what we're doing socially, and we try to find ways that we feed into one another. And whether it's through their food banks they run, whether it's them helping with out of the cold and helping people in need, we try to find a way. So we're not just here as a business group. We're not just here working with business. We're trying to work with all organizations and agencies, because I think that's the only way this community will continue to prosper. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be your mayor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you this morning, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks very much.